Okay, yay. All right. Welcome, everybody, on the 16th of December, 2002. Elizabeth and Aaron are here with us live. And I'm excited to go over chapter 5. We'll see. I kind of, we'll just see how far we get in chapter 5. And as far as I was kind of doing my thing last night and, making my little drawings and my notes and all this kind of stuff, right? Um, I didn't make it through all of chapter 6 with that. That doesn't mean we're not going to go over it. It's just that then I would wing it. But we'll see. We'll see if we kind of get through chapter 5. Okay, then all right. This chapter's there. Chapter 6 is a very interesting chapter. Not that the other ones aren't interesting. Chapter 6 is the most yoga-y of all the chapters. Like yoga, what most people think of as yoga, Ashtanga yoga, which Krishna talks about in the 5th chapter, which is where we're going to start today. So, is everyone read? Have we read chapter 5? Okay, Aaron, no. Okay, that's all right. Did you read chapter 6 too, Elizabeth?
I'm on chapter 9. I'm a model student.
Oh, look at you get a star. You get a
Get
gold
a star.
star. Yay. Okay, you're almost halfway through.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay, so chapter 5. In this one, it's called Life of Freedom. Um, that's a nice, and there's the picture of the lotus there, right? So the lotus, we all know what that symbolizes. Why it's a big yoga symbol analogy is that the lotus flower blooms even though it's in mucky, icky water. So it rises above the muck and thrives and is beautiful despite its surroundings. So that's if that's not an apt analogy for today's world, I don't know what is, right? Is to try to be just to try to rise above it and as much as possible not let it affect you and not drag you down. Doesn't so I don't want to be the kind of we don't want to be unaffected, like numb or unaware, because that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today is it's not that you are disconnected from the world in the sense that you don't know what's going on, because that's actually quite important to know what's going on. So we're not uh, we don't want to be ignorant of what's going on in the world, but we want to, and actually, but because with this knowledge we can actually understand it for what it is and not be so bewildered by it. You can't help but be somewhat bewildered. Just like, oh my God, I can't believe Jack. Hello, Jack. Jack's appearance is important. Hello, Jack. How's Lily? Elizabeth? She's good. Okay.
She's good. She actually made progress today. I'm just gonna interject this. Like I was able to hold her and she kept purring. She didn't like freak out because she's a traumatized kitty. So I was like, this is fabulous. So anyway,
Aw,
continue.
that's important. Okay. So I made some notes here about chapters 3 and 4 because each chapter flows into the other. Okay, because it's a conversation, but it still has there's a flow to it. So chapter 3, pretty much, if you want to sum it up in like one sentence, it's like find out who you are and do that for God. Don't do another one's duty. Your duty is your own. Don't if you do another one's duty imperfectly, it's better to do your own imperfectly than do someone else perfectly. And then chapter 4 is how to discern wisdom. So it's transcendental knowledge, how to understand. That's what we talk about action and inaction and inaction and action. So it's a breakdown on how to understand what transcendental wisdom is. So as opposed to like material wisdom and how to differentiate between the two. So once you understand who you are and what your purpose is, and this isn't like a black or white thing. This is something that evolves over time because we change. hopefully we change. We don't want to stay the same. We want to always be evolving. Um, we don't want to think, oh, this is it, and like we've landed in this, learned the spirituality, and that's sort of the end of our learning. Actually, we're always in a process of growing, expanding, and some things will work for a while, and then they don't, and things like that. So when you put 3 and 4 together, what it means is action with knowledge of God and how things work in the world. So that's where we're coming here with the life of freedom. Okay, because we don't want to be bound, right? We mentioned this already, the Satchitananda. We are, by our very nature, we're eternal, we're full of knowledge, and we're full of bliss. And to be bound up is that's why in the material world we feel generally uncomfortable. Like most people, especially the spiritual people, like the people that get attracted to a spiritual path are feeling this way because they've already figured out on some level that they don't belong here. There's something in here about the way things are working in the material world. It just doesn't add up, doesn't work. Okay, so we don't want to be bound. How do we not be bound is how we, this is where chapter 5 comes in. So this is how we've progressed from 3 to 4. And let's read what the little beginning of it says. Life of freedom. As a lotus sits upon the water without becoming wet, so the soul illuminated by wisdom lives in the world in freedom and joy. The wise see all beings as equal and the Lord as the friend of all. So this is kind of in a little summary what it means to live a life of freedom. So a lot of that has to do obviously with the mind. Okay, because when we are illuminated by wisdom, then we see the world in a different light, and we don't get bound by our actions. Our actions don't create more bondage for us. And when we understand things clearly, then we see we don't get caught up in the drama as much. I say as much because we're still working on it. I still shake my fist at the TV set many times, and that's okay. It's all a process, and some days we're better at it than others, right? So freedom through work. Okay. So verse 2. So anyway, Arjuna, so Krishna, he asked a question. He says, Krishna, first you recommend renouncing work, then work and yoga. Tell me which is best. He's like, all right, you told me 2 different things. They seem conflicting. I don't get it. Please explain. So here again, I've said this many times, is that it's okay to question if you don't get it the first time, if it sounds contradictory. It's not a truly spiritual teacher is not going to take it the wrong way if you ask humbly, like, I didn't get that. So that's a very important point, is these are giving us clues as to how you find a genuine spiritual teacher that's not going to exploit you or lead you down a wrong path. So these are all little ways to recognize a real teacher, is that it's okay to ask questions. Because once they say you can't ask questions, that's a huge red flag. Like, wait, whoa, that's the whole way how else are you going to know? Don't say, oh, just believe me. Just because, like if they're getting cagey about that, why they're not answering your question, then I would start to raise doubts about them. So he's confused and he just wants to know. And so Krishna says, renouncing work and work in yoga both lead to liberation. But of the 2, work in yoga is better. So this is the second time he says this, okay, where he says that working without being invested in the results is better than just renouncing things.
Is that what he means every time he says work in yoga? He means work without attachment to it?
Yes.
Is that what that means? Okay.
Exactly. And in fact, I think it's the next page. where it says, or maybe it says it over and over and over, but that is yoga. The work of yoga means understanding why you're doing it, and you're doing it for a higher purpose, not for a material gain. Yeah, that's actually a more accurate definition of yoga. And when Krishna says yoga in the Gita, that's what he means. So you get another gold star. Yay! Yes. Okay. So this is so working in renunciation strengthens one's knowledge. So this, and I wrote a little note here. So knowledge, so the word knowledge, one of the words for knowledge in Sanskrit is gyan, which is not spelled like that at all. It's Jnaa, Jnana, and yeah, it's gyan. The gyan and vigyan. So gyan is knowledge. Vigyan means realize knowledge, and you realize knowledge when you act upon the knowledge. Right? It's like practical. It's like why we do internships and things like that in work situations, right? You can read in theory about how to do whatever, but until you practice it, then you really understand how it really works in the world. So this is what he's referring to here. Verse 4, the ignorant speak of yoga as different from the contemplative path, yet a true follower of one of these paths achieves results of both. So he's saying, as he said in the chapter before, he said all paths lead to are my path and eventually lead to me. And he's saying that you can use the contemplative path where you meditate and you study and you do this sort of more that questioning, philosophical, which again is not something. It's not something we don't want to. We want to have an understanding philosophically, but at the same time, the way you're going to progress faster is if you work in renunciation. So you can do both. You kind of do both at the same time, but you're going to see more results quicker working in renunciation than only doing the philosophical path. Okay, and actually in this word yoga here also means karma, so it means work in this one. So again, yoga, then working for without the result, working without attachment to results. Okay, so verse 5, the position reached by the contemplative can also be reached by the one who works in yoga. One who sees contemplation and action as the same truly sees. So ultimately, they are the same. They're the same in the sense that they'll lead to the same goal. It's just one is more recommended and is actually easier, and you're less likely to stumble, because the nature of the soul is active, just to be active. So this is a note I made. This wasn't a note I made recently. I don't remember exactly where I got it from, but it's very valid for here. So one way to think about that is that you want to be materially detached, but spiritually attached. Okay, does that make sense? So attached to the idea that I'm doing this for a higher purpose, and that understanding is very important, because sometimes the material side has to change. We don't want to get too caught up in like that it looks the same materially all the time. You know what I'm saying? So when we don't ever want, this is not the place to go, well, we've always done it this way, or I've always done it this way, because it can get, it probably needs adjusting materially. So we're not attached to, so say you're part of a spiritual organization and you're given the job of secretary. Let's just say that, okay? And you work at that job for 10 years. And after about 10 years, you might be like, you're getting a little frustrated, a little maybe bored with it, or it's kind of run its course materially. But you think, oh, because it's a spiritual, I'm working for a spiritual organization, it's spiritual, so I have to be attached to that. But no, you can change it up. And so don't be attached to the material thing of it just because it's part of a spiritual thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So don't get stuck. I've seen, and I'm not thinking of anyone in particular. I can think of myself actually, that I've been in positions like that where you have to let some things go to move on. That's a very important spiritual. So spirituality is dynamic. It's dynamic. It should inspire you. Doesn't mean that every moment of every day you're like, oh yay, but just
What if you hate your job?
huh?
What if you hate your job? Then, like,
Yeah. And
how does that like inspire you, and like how do you, I don't know.
well, sometimes you read you got to get a new job. I
Yeah.
guess I'm talking about it in the reverse, that you think because it, like you never should change it because you've all of a sudden spiritualized it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's and we always need a question. We always need a review, right? That's why, New Year's is a nice time. It's a time to review, right?
Yeah.
And where changes need to be made. Okay, so let's see so on the next page is that? Oh, 54, I've written over it, 54. So on this second paragraph here, to practice yoga is to seek closer union with God. The essential point here is that the attempt to renounce the world will succeed only if we positively attach ourselves to God by acting in the awareness of God's presence. Yoga is more than theory, it is practical action. And that yoga, that last sentence I've got like highlighted 2 times. So it's more than theory, is practical action. That's that different, that gyan and vigyan, the difference there. So any questions on that as we kind of go on through here? Okay. So this is a nice word, enlightenment. Ooh, that's a nice topic. So I've got written here, understanding the interrelations between the jiva, so that's the soul, who we are, the modes of material nature, and the super soul, or the God within. So once we have those 3 things, like kind of working together, that's one way to describe enlightenment. Okay. So verse 10 here is one of the most famous verses. As the lotus leaf is untouched by water, so one who works without attachment, devoting all actions to the Lord, is untouched by sin. So this word sin, that's one of those triggery words. And whenever we're referring to that word in the concept of this, like of the Vedic, of the Eastern philosophy, it's not sin like the Christian sense. It's anything that takes us farther from God. So it's not like a mark that makes us bad people. It's just, we're at every moment we have a choice of whether we're kind of moving toward going closer to our relationship with God or moving away from it. That's all it is. And so doing things that are taking us farther away then is considered a sin. But it's not like, it doesn't make us a bad person. It's a choice that we make of how we're choosing to progress. And we're always, if you just think of it as a path, and we may stray a little from the path or whatever, we get distracted, we get whatever, or we got to go back or backtrack, or But like we mentioned back in the second chapter or the third chapter, there is no loss or diminution. So in one sense, you never lose any progress you've made in the ultimate sense. You might have a point where like mentally you may feel stuck, but you don't lose anything really in the end. Like when you hit the equals button at the end of your life, that's still going to count for you. Okay.
That's a good question.
Yes, you may. I love questions.
One of the things I have a hard time wrapping my brain around is that my entire reason to exist is to worship a god and to like devote myself to this thing. Like it feels very narcissistic somehow. You know what I mean? I have trouble with that.
Okay, that's valid. And this is where the idea of bhakti, this is where, because it's not just that you are giving, 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 and you don't get anything in return. There's a loving relationship there. And when we get to chapter 7 is when we really start to dive into that part of the Gita where Krishna is very reciprocal, where he starts talking about himself. And I get what you're saying because I felt that way too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we just sort of have to, and this is what I was talking about when in that very first class when I was saying, I'm not asking you to believe all this first shot out of the, first time out of the thing to read the Gita that, you're going to accept all this. But my hope is that you're going to find some things that work for you. And as you maybe add those things and have a different view of life and start to understand a little more how the workings of the material work are, that you be able to see how Krishna is actually already interacting with you.
Yeah. I think I've had that struggle my whole life with whether it was Catholic church, Protestant church, because there's so much focus on this, like I'm devoted to you, I'm praising you. And I've always had a lot of trouble with that because I just didn't really understand. I'm like, that's my whole reason for being here, is to just go to church and sing to this thing, and that's it. that means I'm doing it right. And that never.
No, and that's when we get quiet and we kind of let Krishna talk to us too.
Yeah.
And that when you start to feel that, that's when you'll get, and that's where we talk about kind of letting Krishna, and also when we say Krishna, even though she's not mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, ultimately God is male and female. There is definitely a female aspect to the ultimate end. And how did I say that? I'm going to find, I said it very well in this interview that I did. Let me find it. And I thought of this, where can I find it? Oh, no, I can get it. Because, and I think that's an important thing for us, especially for us in our feminine bodies that we have. And what did I say? I think I said ultimately God is male and female. Where did I say it? Okay. Okay, we recognize ultimately God is as much female as male. So just kind of remember that too when I say Krishna, when I say God, that when I say that, that's what I mean too. And I think that's another thing that can help us in female bodies when we have that understanding that there's the mother as well, there's the father, and then there's the mother too. And we wouldn't be in these bodies having a woman's experience if there wasn't that in the spiritual world too. It just doesn't make sense. If whatever's in the source, whatever's in the creation has to be in the source too, right?
Does that mean Does that apply to like really negative, dark, ugly things too that people either do or they come up with for movies or whatever? Does that mean that's somewhere also?
Well, the material world is a is a the perverted reflection of the world of so there's like the flip side of it, and then there's like the reflection of it. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
We're kind of like this upside down version of how things are. I mean,
Okay.
your world. So, but there's no way that there could be. I mean, if there wasn't a divine feminine, then we wouldn't. Then there would be no females down here. You know, and that's definitely something that's been lost in Western Judeo-Christian religion. And
Yeah.
that's the reasons it's gotten so messed up. Is that there?
Yes, I
The only
agree.
time ever you hear anything about any kind of divine feminine is like right now at Christmas time. And Mary is just, I mean, especially not in Catholicism so much, because you have Mary, that you talk about Mary, you know, interceding and things like that. But I mean, in the Protestant religions, that's the only time she's even mentioned is right now, Christmas. And then once Jesus is born, she's out of the picture. Yeah. But I hope that you, I mean, as you go on your journey, Elizabeth, that you'll see that Krishna, and I can speak from experience, and maybe Aaron can too, a little, that God is very reciprocal. So it's not just because he's got a big head.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that'll probably come. I think I've been through so much crap and so much trauma and so much that it doesn't feel like there's anything. But then I know that there is because I can look backward and see all these things and I can see myself now that I'm
Yeah,
not sick and I have a home and all of that. Well, I'm not sick with COVID, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like,
And later on, Krishna says that he is like the string holding the pearls together. You don't see the string, you just see the pearls all strung together, and you don't necessarily know I mean, you know that there's a string, but you don't see it. And he's kind of like that. He's kind of like in the background until you, even if you want to start talking to him, just saying, well, you know, in a open-hearted way, not in a challenging way, right? Because some of the people that are, have more atheistic tendencies are like, well, if God, if God wants me to see him, he's gonna, come down and show me. I'm like, well, no one's gonna do that. If you're gonna be challenging and kind of a jerk about it, of course he's not gonna do stuff, right? You gotta have a little, you know, yeah. But one reason why people, I think, don't feel love towards God is because they don't know too much about him. And that's where the Gita starts, he starts in chapter 10. You haven't gotten there yet.
no.
Uh, he starts
No.
talking about he starts describing himself. So, of all the beasts, he's the lion, and
I
things like
did underline something though in chapter 9 that's kind of where it says it can take a very long time to be in a position to know the full consequences of an act or an experience. And that kind of was kind of like the pearls you were talking about, where you don't really see the string, you just
yeah,
see little things and you don't see the end of it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
But I appreciate all your questions, Elizabeth.
I have lots.
Good. We want that. I don't want anyone to just accept what I say. I don't. Like that totally goes against what this is about, which is a conversation. And that's why I keep bringing that up. And that's why I want everyone to read the whole thing and understand when Krishna's talking, when Arjuna's talking, the questions that get asked.
I
And
like that about this because I read other things, but what I like about this is there's different options. Like I read something about how if you really find God in nature, which I do, that's where I find him, that's valid. And you don't get that in other religions and things like that. So
Yeah. In chapter 12, Krishna really lays out all your options very succinctly. Do this. And if you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, then do this. Somewhere in that, I'm hoping that you'd find where you are.
yeah.
And if that's, and if that's where you are, you can't be where you're not. And better to be where you are and be like really solid on that than to try to shoot for too high and then you don't make it, and then then you beat yourself up, and false renunciation, thinking you're farther, that you're more advanced than you are. Woo, that's not a good, that's a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That can get you in a lot of spiritual trouble. That's not how you progress. The honesty is the best policy always. See, all these things that we know are true are like way more true even in, I see Erin's like shaking her head. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, when you were talking about what if you hate your job, I don't necessarily hate my job, but I feel definitely like a struggle between like spiritual life and day-to-day life, right? And a lot of times for me, it produces inner frustrations and inner anger. And that's going against the very thing I'm trying to get to. So yeah.
And and part of it's the material world.
Yeah.
And we, like Elizabeth's been saying, like sometimes in a lot of times in that moment you don't know why you're going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Later on you figure it out, and then the more you kind of contemplate like that, it makes it easier to kind of be in the now. The now isn't so great because like I say this all the time, I mean, because I haven't had a job and I don't even know, right? Like but we've always had food, we've always had a roof over our head. I've never had my electricity turned off.
That's awesome.
So Krishna got a good track record. That's how I look at it. Like Krishna hasn't let me starve yet. I don't
No,
think.
I'm learning that through these last couple years, just all these times where I can't work, or like now I can't work very much. And and I've had many times in my life where I look in my bank account and I don't understand how that money's there, but it's there and I have enough. There's only, been one or two times where I just didn't. That's when I went to jump off the bridge, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like most of the time, somehow you have enough.
I had this exact conversation with another friend, and she said the same. She said exactly what you said. She's like, "How is it that I have this much money in the bank? It shouldn't be. It should not be because
I've
I'm
done that. I've had a couple of times where I remember one time in my my mid 20s, I think, and I was looking at, and that was when you balanced your checkbook and stuff.
Yes.
I was like, how is this working out? I don't understand. And I don't understand how I have this much. And I was like going over the math over and over, and I couldn't, and I finally just was like, you know what, whatever. Put it down. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So abandoning, this is 11. It's, verse 11. Abandoning, we've only got to 11, and it's 7:39. That's fine. Abandoning attachment, followers of yoga use their body, mind, intelligence, and senses for self-purification. So you just use everything you got, um, you use every opportunity, every situation, good or bad, is somehow. And when we talk about karma, sometimes we do have some bad karma we got to burn off. We don't know. It's hard. You can't pinpoint exactly like tit for tat what what every experience you have is, like where its source is. But the more you come to understand that Krishna loves you and is doing everything, that Krishna is helping you grow and make decisions, and that you might have made some bad decisions in the past and you kind of have to pay for them a little, and but and ultimately you will see, and this is kind of like what you want to work towards, is that you see everything as Krishna's mercy, even something quote unquote bad. We talked about that, I think, week before last. That when you have crises, and especially health crises seem to do it for people, and that you look back and you're like, oh, you're grateful that you had that downtime. Pandemic is gonna, that kind of thing. You will see everything as Krishna's mercy on you, because that's what he's made of. He's made of love. He's made of mercy. He's the omni, right? Omniscient, the most everything. So the most loving, the most kind, the most forgiving. There's nothing we can do that's going to make Krishna hate us. Nothing. Zero. Zip. We might make bad decisions and have to pay for our bad decisions, but that's not. Oh, and that's the next section where actually I just said it. Can't blame God. I made that comment here. So let's go, since we're there. Verse 14, the ruler of the body does not create actions, cause their fruits, or induce others to act. All is done by nature. So this is where we start getting into the three modes of material nature. So there's a reaction, is action and reaction to everything that we do. And it's going to get discussed in detail in the last chapters of the Gita, where we go really into detail about the modes of material nature and how they have an effect on us. So it's just, like you if you go out in the rain, don't complain you're going to get wet, right? Because that's just the nature of water. You're going to get wet. So if you live in Texas, you got to deal with the summers, right? Or something, like people complain about how it is in August. Hello, where do you live? Like that's the nature of living in Texas. Or like I have a friend she's in Pennsylvania. Ugh. No, thank you. I would rather deal with a hot Texas summer than all that snow. No way. So these the three knots I wrote here: the actions, fruits, or induce others to act. We can't make anybody do anything. We're not that powerful. Everyone has to make their own choices. So the next one, the all-pervading Supreme Spirit is not responsible for the sinful or pious actions of the living beings. They are bewildered because their understanding is covered by ignorance. All right, can't blame God. So that chain reaction of desire, chapter 3, where it goes into how we go from desire, and then it goes, and then it leads to anger and forgetfulness, that whole chain reaction of how our mind works. So you can look at that and see, if you kind of start, how you can see how things are interrelated. And in your own life, if you can catch yourself before you get to that, you let something drive you down that dark road where you get anger and you forget about your connection to God. So they are bewildered because their understanding is covered by ignorance. They're just, people are, we haven't learned anything the past few years. People are willfully ignorant. They just are. And it's their choice. And you can give them a million facts. And if they choose to not believe them, well, we can't induce others to act. That's Krishna's words right there. And if we can just sort of go, oh, all right,
Yeah.
Woo! How much of, doesn't mean we like it, but we become detached.
It's hard for me to be detached. Well, how do you be detached when the willful ignorance of the other people really impacts you and your life?
That's hard. How do you do that? This is
what can you?
This is where I would just pray for, just pray. it's hard to understand all the intricate karma. Somehow this is like this one Swami, very good friend of mine. And this is not spiritual bypassing, but he says this a lot, and he says everything is perfect just as it is. But somehow in this unfathomable, fathomable, I can even say that word, it kind of will make it, there is this side of Krishna, because it's so complicated, and so like our minds are small and only so much, and the universe and just all this workings is so vast for us to completely understand it. It's just like, which is not, that's not what any of us wants to hear.
Mhm.
Well, that's what I tell myself, though. I'm just like, this is all happening because it's supposed to happen for whatever reason, and I'm doing what I feel I should do, and that's that's impacting me, and I can't do anything else.
That kind of helplessness is this kind of point of God take over the reins. And when you see that despite all those people doing all those stupid things, that you have the roof over your head and have food, and you have your husband and you have your cats, and
The squirrels. Don't forget the squirrels.
the squirrels. Oh, they're so cute. Marley, and what's the other one?
Mindy.
Mindy.
I know
Oh,
I should have done like Mork and Mindy, but Marley came first. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I hope that helps. So I love this one too. As the sun lights up everything in the daytime, knowledge dispels ignorance and reveals everything.
Hmm.
So
Except for the people that don't want the knowledge.
they don't want it. Yeah.
Why don't they want it?
It's a good question.
I find it hard to understand.
Well, later on, when we start talking about the modes of nature and how you can identify people in they're it's they have some lesson to learn, or they're stubborn, or how many times, we do stuff all the time we know we're not supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
It's not to that magnitude.
Right.
I'd like to think, but you think of just some habit that you have, or something you wish about yourself that you would change, that you kind of know, like,
Yeah.
I should not eat all that gingerbread,
Chocolate.
whatever,
Or could it be like maybe they're not ready? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that from like a position of like, oh, I'm so high and mighty, but like maybe they're just not like cooked long enough yet, right?
They haven't stewed their pieces long enough.
Yeah, they have to marinate some more first.
One thing that my teacher said to me about, he says, you're, what did he say? Your material exhaustion. When you
Ooh,
reach the point of material exhaustion is when you go, this isn't working anymore. What do I
yeah.
do? And that's like and again, when you look back, you'll see, oh yeah, I met that person and read that book and did that online study thing. And,
Yeah.
and
I hit
you
that
see,
point this year, like in
What?
January. I think I hit that material exhaustion point in January when I went out on medical leave from work.
Mhm.
And then I just got to this point, and then they fired me and all that. And I was just like, I don't care. I don't want to buy anything anymore. I don't care. I just don't want to be sick. I don't want to feel crappy. I don't care if I never buy anything, if we never travel again. I just got really exhausted from everything.
You didn't look back. Yeah. Didn't I send this to you last Christmas? It was around this
You
time.
did. You sent it to me
Oh.
on December 21st of last year is when you sent it to me.
Oh,
And I was like, really struggling, and I took a couple weeks off trying to get myself back, and then I just fell off in January. So yeah.
Oh boy, almost the anniversary. Which
Yeah.
this year, the 21st, is a huge astrological event.
I know. Do you see that? I was looking outside at Jupiter and Saturn above the moon tonight. It's so pretty.
And calling it the Christmas star.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, in the Western and the Vedic, because I follow both, and it drives some people crazy. And I had to remember who I'm talking to as to which language to speak, because it means the same thing, but it's just looking at it from different ways. But Jupiter and Saturn are coming together, and that's interesting because Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and Saturn is the planet of constriction, and they're coming together. What does that mean?
We're gonna explode.
It's meeting at 0 degrees Aquarius in Western astrology. So that's very powerful. And so Aquarius, we've been under this really heavy Capricorn energy, which is all that, all that patriarchy and institutional, and that's why, in fact, it one of the planets is going into Aquarius tonight.
Sweet.
The past few days have been really heavy. That's because we're the last degrees of this really heavy Capricorn. It builds, right? The energy builds, and at the end of it, it's
Has it been that way for several weeks?
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
we're talking about big planets that move very slowly. So yeah, the past few weeks.
Oh. Okay.
And then we had an eclipse on Monday, and it really started. You could kind of feel some things were exposed, and
There's a lot being exposed right now. I mean, I kind of feel like we're at this turning point. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I feel like all these people that have been holding on to power are just gasping for and fighting as they're going down.
Yeah, they're acting like that. They're grasping at straws. Their power grab is it's just, we get the Aquarian energy coming in, and it literally lighten things up because it's an air sign.
I'm Aquarian.
Oh, yay! So, okay. So, at the bottom here, I've highlighted, even though we may be active in so many ways, if our actions are dedicated to God, they bring freedom. Okay. The body is a gift of God. As long as we identify with this city of 9 gates, which are the different holes in our body, we are bound by it. But as soon as we identify with the Lord, who also dwells within the body, use the body in his service, we are free. Okay. So, and I think this last section here, I think hopefully helps answer your question too, Elizabeth. The Lord is the constant companion in our heart. He perceives our desires without interfering with them, as a person smells the perfume of a flower without physical contact. He is impartial. Even though we are in illusion, he does not deny us independence. Instead, he helps us fulfill our desires in such a way as to ultimately bring us nearer to him. So it's like that. Be careful what you ask for, you might get it. So somewhere in your sojourn of existence, there was a lesson that you had a desire to learn something.
Clearly.
Huh?
A lot, I guess.
Yeah. But the cool thing, and it's not that we're having a tally sheet of these things, but another thing, and I didn't talk about it too much, but we can talk about it right now. So there is karma. So material actions, even good material actions, have to have a reaction, even if they're good. Okay, so usually, and this is generally people who are born in this life, like maybe in a wealthy family or something like that, that's an indication of some good karma. Now, what they do with it is good, or then they can choose whether to use it for good or use it for bad, right? But the other thing is a karma. So a karma are spiritual actions that actually erase karma. They not only do they not incur like another material reaction, good or bad, but they start like kind of wearing away the karma you have. So it starts purifying, and then like we often say is like that sometimes then the reactions that we would get are softened, like our sentence is somewhat commuted. We're giving community service instead of having to go to jail or something. These are just analogies to kind of understand this idea that kind of the more we kind of put things on the spiritual side, then we it doesn't mean bad things still happen to spiritual people, but that doesn't mean that your life is just hunky-dory the minute you get on the spiritual path. But again, once you understand how things work, like again in a theoretical way, then at least, and then when you start to feel the presence of God, Krishna in your life, and start putting the pieces together, then it brings that sense of freedom. You don't feel so bound to things. That's the hope. So seeing with equal vision, boy, we're really chatty. That's fine. Actually, what can we get? Anyway, we're just gonna keeping on. Seeing with equal vision. So 18, the wise see with equal vision a learned and gentle priest, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast. So what that means is that we actually understand that each living being has a soul inside, and that soul is the same. It's not like a dog soul or a cat soul or we're all children of God. And I know this, Elizabeth. I mean, those in that the soul in those cats is no different than the soul of we have.
Yeah, I've had a really interesting realization lately about Lily, is I think that Lily is the same soul that was Mimi and is the same soul that was my childhood cat. And I think that soul has been traveling with me for a very long time, because there's just something that's just, that I can't really explain.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah,
have
you said
her.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've told Jason, when she dies, it's going to be like when Mimi died, where I just, and it's, I don't know. But I've really started feeling that's some soul that's been journeying with me for a long time.
Yeah, because I know you're like, when Angel died, it was bad, but it was different.
Yeah, it was different. And like Mimi, she came to visit me after she died for like a year. She came to visit me. Angel, when he died, I felt him, like my chest cracked open and he went inside. So it was very different. So it was like Mimi went on, Angel went in here, and then I think Mimi's come back somehow, and Lily. And I don't know, it's just very hard to explain. And I love Jack, but I think Jack is here for Jason, honestly.
But see, so this little Leela, we would call, like, just shows that it's not random.
No.
And if you can kind of look at your own life, and just this little part of the play of the interaction of the souls, right? And that that's all, it's all not just chance. I guess that's a good way of saying it. It's not a chance. And so who's orchestrating that? There is an intelligent, loving, all whatever, that knows exactly what you need.
I know, and I think that's why I've moved away from the Western religions, because they don't allow for that concept. And for me, coming into such a traumatic life and working through all that, it explains it for me, whereas the other religions didn't explain it, where I could look at it and go, well, maybe it's a karma, something or other that
Mhm.
started before I came here. Because once I got to my 30s, something changed. I don't know if I burned off some of it or just, by continuing to try to do good and try to do the right thing. But something started changing in my 30s where it just wasn't so hard anymore. And I've had hardship, but not like, before Jason.
Yeah. And you can see that too. It
Yeah.
all, yeah. And it's when you kind of you have to pull back, you have to stop and you're
Yeah.
spinning things out in your mind and stop and pull back and look and be calm and, but the same, so, that the, the, the spiritual spark that is in us is with the makeup of it is exactly the same. It doesn't matter the kind of body that the being has. So that's
I
what it's
can't kill
saying.
bugs anymore.
Yeah, I know it's hard. We always
I,
yell Hare Krishna and then smash them. Well, because there is something to, like you don't want a wasp to sting you. Like, you
right.
defend yourself. It's okay,
Right.
but you also don't want to have disease in your house, and you don't want, you don't want your cats to get disease, so you kill the fleas on them. And there's
Yes,
they
there's
have their karma too, right? If you're born as a flea, you're kind of, your days are numbered if you start sucking on one of my cats,
I
right?
know, but I had this thing, like when I was in yoga teacher training, like 10 years ago, whenever that was, there was this roach that was coming during meditation and I was like flicking him and flicking him. And then like a couple months ago, there was a roach on my back patio and I put some stuff on it to kill him. And then I was like, oh, I feel so bad. And I rinsed it all off of him. So I'm like, he's just outside. What am I doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we see them all as you know uh, children of God. They have just as much worth. I mean, again, the things are relative. Like, we don't, we want to keep our home free of pests and disease, but that's a different question than do they have like a right to be, we don't want to go out of our way to mistreat any living being, you know. So we see the soul. So if we learn to see all beings as divine, as part of the supreme, and therefore intimately connected with one another and with ourselves, we do not discriminate on the basis of species or form, or on the basis of caste, color, or creed. Now this is a hard one too, and we see, we see people that I don't gotta say it, but we know the people out there that drive us crazy. Even though they drive us crazy, they're, but we can, it does help when we see them as, bewildered spirit souls covered by ignorance than just these horrible, evil, it does help. It doesn't, on one hand, it still makes you crazy, but this knowledge, even knowing this, like, yes, they're children of God too. There's, they're the soul, they have a soul, eat meats, what is it? There's 4 propensities of a soul in the material world. Doesn't matter what kind of body you have. You eat, you sleep, you mate, and you defend. Those are like the 4 things that any creature here does. And of those 4 propensities, like the natural instincts, is to defend. That's the one that's the easiest to rile up in people. You say something they don't like, they get defensive. Natural. So it's just it's a part of all who we are, and we're working on that. Those of us that are aware of it, but most people aren't that aware of it. So they have the isms. I wrote here the isms. So we've talked about sexism and racism. I think ageism is something that's come up. Okay, but one, I think, as this Aquarian energy is coming in, because Aquarian energy, some of the qualities of Aquarian energy are androgyny, right? So we see the rise of more, you see more, like especially young people are coming out and saying that they feel they're, binary, the different genders and binary and non-sexual, and that's a very Aquarian thing. Very Aquarian. They don't identify as male or female. They're sort of they're just a person, androgyny. But speciesism. So we're not going to discriminate another living entity just because it's in a cow body or a cat body, because that's one of the things I tear my hair about is like you see people. It's a thing that people will see animals like, oh, this one is food and this one is not, and again, that is a realization that you can't make anybody come to any quicker than they're going to come to it, and we have to feel compassion towards people. That's just where they are. That's just another way that you can see how people are struggling in the material world to, make sense of things, because it's like really, that's a whole thing. This psychologist, she wrote a whole book on it she calls it carnism. And it's cognitive dissonance that we see that not that the world is programmed to say, oh, well, here's a cat or a dog and we're going to save it no matter what. But then there's a cow and a pig and a chicken and they're considered food, and people don't see that they're the same. That soul inside that we're just talking about here. Doesn't mean people that eat meat are like horrible people. They just haven't come to that realization yet. But it's frustrating sometimes when you know that. But we have to cultivate compassion for that's the Buddhist, that Buddhist idea of cultivating compassion. And we can't ever. That's something we always need to be. And that's part of the chit, right? Sat, chit, and nanda. So full of knowledge. So when we can disseminate like carnism and kind of break it apart as to what it is, it kind of you see it as a psychological way of thinking, which kind of, again, that's an Aquarian thing too, makes it a little like detached, and it takes away that good bad. It's just a psychological, they have a psychological, due to conditioning, right? Due to the fact that we all grew up, I know I did, most people in the world actually are raised that way, like, oh, here's the cat and the dog, and we love them and we feed them and we give them, put clothes on them or whatever, and we give them names, right? But the cow and the pig and the chicken, just they're food, so that's just our conditioning. So, and all right, how much time do we got, people, ladies?
I don't have a limit.
Huh?
I don't have a limitation, except
All
I'll
right,
have to
Erin,
pee in about 20 minutes.
We're almost done with this chapter. You good for like 15 minutes or so?
Oh yeah.
All right. So the sources of misery, we all want to know about that, right? Because we all, so verse 22, pleasures arising from the senses are sources of misery. What? That doesn't make no sense. Here it is. They have a beginning and an end, Arjuna, and the wise do not delight in them.
Does that include like smelling a rose? That's not good either, because it ends.
Well, don't be attached to it. So don't get all sad when it ends. Like, yeah. It's okay to enjoy something, but you understand that it has to end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that attachment. So the idea being, so this is sort of inferring this other spiritual concept, which says be in the now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, someone gives you something that's nice, like say a bouquet of flowers for your birthday. Well, it doesn't mean you have to go, that's just terrible because it's temporary and I'm not going to enjoy it because they're going to die. No. When you understand that they are temporary and they're only going to smell nice and whatever for, whatever, depending on the kind of flowers, you know. So you can enjoy them in that moment, but you're not attached. So you don't go when the flowers wilt and die, you're just not like, oh my God, the flowers, you know. Yeah. I wrote here pandemic lesson, right? Because what are people just going on about right now? Just, oh, I can't eat. I guess we can't eat out. We can't do this. We can't do that. Well,
Yeah.
It's so annoying. I'm like, get it to go. That's what we do. We can't eat out at the place, but if we want tacos, then we go pick up tacos and bring them home. It's like ridiculous.
yeah, and it's just like, you know, and guess what? It's not going to last forever.
Right.
It's not. And even if it's a year and a half or 2 years, kind of, you know, depending on exactly what it is, you know. I mean, I would think by summer, a lot of things will be, you know, we'll start to kind of undo a lot of this, you know, whatever, you know, not that long. It's not that long, and just deal with it, people, you know.
Yeah.
So rising from the senses, it's we're more attached to this, like, well, this is how things ought to be, you know. And if, say, your favorite restaurant is closed for now because whatever, then it's just, you know, it's our. But when we start to, and then we're going to talk about that in chapter 6, is about joy, and joy comes from not being led by your senses all over the place. That doesn't mean you don't enjoy things, but your source of happiness is not external. Your source of happiness is coming from in here, you know. And I believe, feel it, you know, from my experience and from reading this, is that that's what God is trying to teach us right now. Like, happiness doesn't come from all the fun stuff you do. Like, real happiness is being content with what you have, communing with God inside. And it's not about going to a temple or a church or a building, whatever. We can still get together virtually, you know, and we're spending more time, you know, like, we have more time to do these things. Even, you know, people that have now, they're working from home, so they might have added an hour more of their day from not having to their commute, you know.
Yeah.
And if they're not stuck in a cubicle expected to be there 8 hours a day, maybe they can do their work. And I know someone, his wife, because now he's an accountant, and he used to work downtown and would have to go and, you know, be at the job and do his 8 hours at the job and come home. But now that he's not at the office, he can get the work done in like 4 hours.
Mhm.
The same work.
That's
So
what I
not
always
only,
hated about corporate jobs, because you were forced to just stay there even if you were done or ahead. You still just had to stay there.
yeah, we have all of a sudden we have more time, and people aren't, traveling and eating out like they used to or whatever. They have money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pandemic lesson.
And the environment is happier.
Yes, all these things are much better, and so we can see how through the pandemic that a lot of misery is caused by what was considered like normal American life. And now all that has just come to a freaking screeching halt. And a lot of people are like, and you know, like, whoa, this isn't so bad. You know, I was listening to a thing today on NPR or whatever, you know, KERA station about you know, uh, clothing sales. You know, like clothing like bras and things that are uncomfortable, like all the, you know, they aren't selling, but like sweatpants.
Yeah.
And it said, oh, shirts. People are buying more shirts than they are pants because, you know,
Yeah.
it's just talking about the different things that are selling more now than used to in the, you know. because from the actually right now I did that, and I thought because I listened to that piece on NPR is because actually I went out. I went to my job at the church today, so I actually kind of got a little dressed up, kind of. But I came home and I put on my sweatpants, but I kept my top on. So they're my sweatpants.
Heck yeah.
You.
They're very comfy, very comfy. So, not that I wouldn't wear sweatpants to the church, but it's kind of like the one day where I actually am going seen in public, so a little bit. So here, the last sensory pleasures are described here as sources of misery. Sense enjoyment in a moderate way is a healthy part of life. So we're not shucking it all right? This is the middle path. Remember that. Bhagavad Gita is all about it's not black or white. It's it's all relative to one another. But it is wise to control the body's sensory demands because sense pleasures are addictive and the cause of much misery. We all know that one. The first step to spiritual consciousness is to know oneself as spirit different from the body. As we overcome the illusion of being the physical body, we can cultivate a steady mind unaffected by hatred and attraction. We talked about that in chapter 2. So attraction and aversion are just the same, two sides of the same coin. A steady mind does not rejoice at gain or lament at loss. And that also harks back to chapter 2. So it's like the middle way. Okay, so we're at the last. Liberation. So interesting. So we got enlightenment and then liberation. So it's a process. And we kind of think, oh, we want to be enlightened. That's just kind of getting the knowledge. Then how does that actually kind of filter into like working in your life, right? And that goes like the Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, what? Chop wood, carry water. It looks the same on the outside, but it's what's in here and in here. The liberation. So this 27 and 28. So where he says, excluding outward sensations with gaze fixed between the eyebrows, with inward and outward breath suspended within the nostrils, with senses, mind, and intelligence under control, the contemplative, intent on liberation, is free from desire, fear, and anger, and is forever liberated. So this right here is what's gonna lead us into chapter 6, because this is when he's talking about Ashtanga yoga, and Krishna's gonna break that down in chapter 6 in a more detailed way. But the purport to this, so this is anyway, the one whose happiness and joy within, who is illumined within, is liberated in the supreme and attains Brahman. So this is when we understand where real happiness comes from. We're actually liberated, and it can happen in this body. We don't. It's not something we have to wait for. Like and I'm not putting down Christians, because I just had this conversation with one of my best friends today about I'm so grateful right now for some year. 2020 was like the year of the Christians for me. Like seriously, some of my Christian friends have been so generous and so some of the best people I know, and have done wonderful things for me this year. Like I'm eternally grateful, and it's been very healing for me, because I rejected Christianity and like the church a long time ago, but I had to be healed from that. That's that attachment and aversion, right? I can't just say no,
That's what I am right now. I'm like, no, yes. I think I have more work to do.
I do. And when the church I work at now, which I work there, what? Yeah. But when I first walked in there, even though it's sort of been vetted by my yoga teacher, Kirsten, man, I walked into that church and that chapel, and there's the cross there, and there's the pews, and I was just, woo, I brought up some stuff, very visceral, so up here I was like, I know this is cool because they're letting us do a yoga festival here and all this, right? But I still had to heal what was in here that got wounded when I was a child. And that was a process. And
Mm.
you do that through, at least that's happened, is the people. It's personalism. And that's the whole thing too, is you can reject an institution. And we all know that, any material institution has got a lot of problems. Lord knows the one I'm a part of has a lot of problems because it's material. These are material problems. Philosophically, there's no problem. And even Christianity, in its pure form, philosophically, there's not a problem. It's the people. And so, who hurt me? Jesus didn't hurt me. The people hurt me, right? So, so that's who's going to heal me too. But it won't be the same people. It's not like Sister Regina, you know, like my first grade teacher is going to come back and be like, I'm sorry I did all those things to you. I'm sorry, I mean, but I also see that she was influenced, you see that she was acting how she was acting from her conditioning and what she was trained and all that, but it took these other Christians to get, these are real Christians. They accept me for who I am. Like, I'm not hiding anything,
Yeah.
and that's really healing.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't just say, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with that. So I hope you find that, Elizabeth. I hope you find your healing.
I'm working on it. My counselor is a Christian counselor, and that helps because it gives me another perspective. And the minister that married me is also very open-minded and very accepting, and that's helpful. But then, like, I see that Joel Osteen took $4.5 million in
God.
PPP loans, and I was like, bleh.
I still don't like him, but
Yeah.
that. And the Christians I know denounce all that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to have them, and I feel for the first time since I rejected Christianity, which Elizabeth, I was 15 years old and I'm 52 now. So it can
That's
take
about when I rejected Catholicism and I went over to Protestantism. And then in my late 20s, I just forget all of it.
it could take a while, but and so yeah, I wish everybody gets healed from whatever trauma, because I know even in our, and I say our, because Aaron is also, I don't know how you would describe yourself, but Aaron is signing on, I think, to the same lineage that I did. Yeah. So that's how we met. We met at the temple or a temple program.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, I mean, there's problems in that too. And there's kids that were because you grow up in something, you're gonna, you're gonna get traumatized as a child somehow,
Well, that's what I was thinking too. There were things that happened in the in Hare Krishna, like in the early, late 70s and 80s. And so it's really just people. It's not God, it's people.
Yeah. But
right.
That's the double-edged sword of, that's the double-edged sword of being you need association, you need people, but then people are flawed. And when you organize people, you become an institution.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, to function in the world, you need some sort of organization.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
That's why this is so attractive to me, because I hate the organizations. I hate all of them because the people that have hurt me the most have claimed to be good people through these organizations. And so this allows me, I still need something, and this gives it to me without,
And even just for me, and I'll just kind of, I've had to come to grips with things about the institution that I signed on to, that I don't like everything about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the teachings less potent. That doesn't make positive relationships I have within that.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a good place to find some good people. That doesn't mean every single person I love with all my heart. Anyway, we all have, people we have to deal with. It's like family. right? That's how I feel about it. And that's how I've, there's it's all those things we're talking about, karma, like, you don't get to choose your brothers and sisters, kind of who you get to go through life with, right? Some of them you like more than others, and and we respect some people. We have to respect from a little farther away,
Yeah.
and then some people, and that fact, there is a scripture that talks about that, which I love.
Hmm.
The Nectar of Instruction. Have you read that, Erin? Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Anyway, it's a short book. It's only 17 verses long. It's a really nice book
I
that
haven't
talks
read it.
about how to deal with different, and not just in the Hare Krishna movement, but just in general. It shows how people are at different levels of advancement and how you interact with each of them. It's
The
very,
Nectar of Instruction.
it's like a sociological explanation.
Nice.
It's very, yes, it's very interesting. So okay, so this last part here is in this version of the Bhagavad Gita that Srila Prabhupada, this one, right? He calls it the peace formula, because we're all looking for peace, right? The world, that's a big thing. And so the way so I know that Rancho Prime's wording of it is a different wording of Srila Prabhupada's peace formula. So these last two paragraphs here, this will be what we're winding up. The real cause of suffering in this world is forgetfulness of the supreme friend. Isn't that a beautiful way to think of God, as the supreme friend? Yeah. And God is our friend, because, and we're he's going to go into the detail about that later, but we have our soul, and then we have Krishna is there's a part of God inside us. So actually our soul, there's two entities.
Sorry.
There's, you okay?
Yeah,
Huh?
I was just touching and I hit the mic on my
Oh, okay. So we have our individual soul, which is us, and then we have an expansion of God, a little spark of God inside us, and so as we go into these and go through our different lives and our different experiences, actually God is there inside us watching it. And he doesn't leave us. This is something the way my teacher says it. He's like, doesn't matter if you're in a germ body or a cat body or a pig body or a demigod body or a human body, Krishna's with you the whole time, And he also uses the example of, he says if he would say, like, if I did something wrong and I went to jail, he's like, you guys might say you're my friend, but if I say, hey, why don't you come to jail with me? Nobody's gonna go. Right? Like, I love you so much, I'm gonna go to jail with you. So that Krishna is so kind that even no matter what we do, he's with us. Literally. I mean, not just like, oh, God isn't out there. This is the crux of the difference between Western thinking and Eastern, as far as this, is that in Eastern thinking, we are already perfect, and we're looking for, it's a descending process of information, is that we kind of clear ourselves of all the whatever, of all the illusion and muck and all this. And when we are cleared, then the information, God is so merciful, God will reveal to us from within, but also like giving us mercy. So it's descending information. Also the teacher, the teacher as a teacher as a teacher as a teacher as a teacher. So the message of the spiritual knowledge is ultimately coming from God down through the teachers. So it's coming on it. And then the Western thinking is that we're down here and God is up here and we got to make it up there. That's hard.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So the Eastern ways, it seems, is so much more gentle and loving. You know, that we get as many chances as we need. You know, that we're not going to be damned to to hell for eternity for one mistake. You know. So, so those who are devoted to the welfare of all beings try to revive Krishna, or I put God consciousness in human society. And this when I highlighted that, it was something that the art teacher Srila Prabhupada said many times. Is he said many times his job wasn't to like turn everyone into Hare Krishnas. He just wanted to revive everybody's God consciousness. And he said, chant your local name of God, So however you perceive that God is in your tradition, then just, pray to that God, you know? So in concluding this chapter, Krishna summarizes knowledge to recognize his presence throughout creation as the enjoyer, the friend, and the goal of all our sacrifices in Karma Yoga. Since we all exist within the Supreme Lord, we cannot enjoy this world without him. Peace will be ours when we know the one who is our supreme and innermost friend. So peace also, the in yoga all the time, shanti, shanti, right? But as most things, or all the Sanskrit words, it doesn't exactly translate exactly to one word. It's not a word for word translation. So Shanti, peace, is peaceful but passive knowledge of God's presence, but it's the beginning of bhakti. So again, when we remove, so there's two parts to it. We can, and it's going to be very much discussed in the next chapter, because just ceasing suffering that's just step one. That's not going to give us the lasting, what we really want. What we do is we quit. We try to end our suffering, or we get a point where we're not as affected by all this knowledge we just got about how things work, and we can become more peaceful. Then when we can kind of stop a lot of the chatter. Then the last aspect, so we're Sat Chit Ananda. So the chit part, we're just getting to the chit part, which is knowledge. And then we can kind of start to touch on the Ananda part, which is the happiness part. But and we're going to go into this more detail in chapter 6, but a lot of thought, a lot of spiritual practices, like the Buddhists, for instance, just kind of take you to that nirvana, this no suffering part, which is, it's great. If you can get to that part, that's a big thing. Not discounting it, but there's more than that. And that's where, when we get into the bhakti sections of the Gita, why, and Krishna will start telling Arjuna that it's the highest, because it's the most full. This is not like a higher, like bad good. It's the fullest expression of how the soul can return to its original state, because we're those three things. We're not just sat and chit. Sat and chit is good when you understand those two things. And it's not even just sat chit as in that's who we are, but understanding God, that we're part of God, and that's like how it works. And then we get into the bliss part, and that's where I think, where I pray, Elizabeth, that you can start to at least see it and maybe begin to taste it, because that's where the happiness, and that's where the reciprocal joy that comes from being in a relationship with with God that you feel like he's, you're getting something for for all everything you're giving him. Because that is what the next step is. It's there.
I hope so.
It is. I mean, yeah, I want you to feel that. I really do. I pray that you will feel that, and that
Trying. I'm still
I,
having I'm still having so many things where I feel like I'm giving and giving and giving, and like I'm not seeing much coming back. I'm just seeing continued struggles, and it's very frustrating.
well, this is where and this is a real thing, is people praying for you.
Yeah.
People who, I'll just use my own stuff as an example. Sometimes when I as I continue my relationship with my guru, my teacher, I'm trying to be a big girl and like try to figure a bunch of stuff out on my own, because that's really what they're trying to do, is help us, guide us. But sometimes I'm just like, I'll just say, can you just pray for me,
Mm.
to him, and then it seems to work. you know
Yeah.
So I would, I'll pray for you, Elizabeth.
Thanks. I do
Yeah.
have random people show up in my life, usually through LinkedIn, because I have like 9,000 followers over there, that just tell me that they're praying for me, or they tell me that what I'm doing is impactful, or whatever. And it usually comes when I really need it, because I'm in a really bad place. But it's like I don't know. It's just a
Yeah.
little.
And the more I hope that you can, that you can connect that to come to feel that is a way that God is showing you.
I have made that connection, so I think
Okay.
that's progress.
So I think the more that, then just, it's just like, the more you, like, the more you are kind of like vocalizing your struggle and saying, I'm having a hard time with this, and opening up, like in situations like this, in a safe place,
Yeah.
or that no one's gonna like damn you to hell or say you're doing it wrong, or
Yeah.
that that you're like becoming vulnerable and like admitting that this is where I am, and we're accepting you and loving you for who you are and where you're at, and it's safe and it's good, and we're all on a journey, and we're all kind of helping each other out. And and I forgot where I was going with that exactly, but
I do that
that
all the time.
that like Krishna's seeing that, and just know that he is seeing that. That's my hope to you, that and that you'll be able to feel that more.
I hope so. I feel
Or
like I've
more.
done this like my whole life, where I've prayed, or people prayed for me, or I've been vulnerable or whatever. And it just, I don't know. I feel like I hit walls all the time, just with everything, which is why I've kind of just stopped this year and said, okay, fine. This is what it is. And I give up. So
That white flag. Well, there's and actually this book, this is, some of my commentary comes from this book called Surrender Unto Me, because that's the last kind of instruction Krishna gives in the Gita, is that abandon all varieties of religion and surrender to me. And a lot of Westerners don't like that word surrender, because it makes it feel like it sounds passive, like we wear the white flag, surrender. But what it really means, like the Sanskrit word is prapadyante. And what that really means is to move forward, to move. It's an active word. It's not a passive word. So when you surrender, you're like taking your hands off the wheel, and
Mm.
when you see that things keep going, like, haven't you seen that more has happened probably this year than the more when you weren't fighting it than when you were?
it's like I have, but then like, for example, this whole thing, this book, I mean, I had the contract dispute with the publisher, and I'm about to break the contract. And, it's like, I had these things that I'd been working for or that I felt like I was supposed to do. And I still am like, well, that may work out better later. I don't know. But it's just like, I feel like things are happening, but then I feel like nothing's happening at the same time, which is why I'm gardening and feeding squirrels. Because
Oh,
it's just like, I don't know, because I'm so sick for, I spend at least half of my day, sometimes 3/4 of my day feeling bad, but then I also notice I get the energy to come to do this because I was feeling really nauseous for most of the day and really terrible. Then I get the energy to come and do this. I get the energy to go work in my garden when I want to do that. So I'm seeing that I'm being given energy to do the things that I need to be doing is what I'm starting to see. And then I just have to, okay, I'm on the sofa, I don't know. It's just a weird place to be.
Well, I'm glad you're starting to figure it out.
I guess.
I mean, it sounds like you say one thing and then you're like, I'm like, oh, poor Elizabeth, and then you say something else. I'm like, well, dang, girl, you getting it.
I think I don't give up. I do keep trying. I mean, I'll give up for a day or two and then I'm like, okay, well, let me try something else. But I never know if I'm really getting anywhere because I continue to just struggle in here, which is why I don't know if I'm really getting anywhere, And then I write this book about like all these lessons I've learned, but I'm still struggling with all of them. And then it's like makes me feel terrible about it.
You need to read your own book again.
I did. I've read it a couple of times and I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Just like
Erin, how old are you? You're gonna
42.
Oh,
Yeah.
should
I'm 40.
This book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Maybe don't read it until after I take it off the market and republish it because I don't make anything off of it right now and my publisher is terrible.
You got it. I think, I was hearing what you were saying though, and I've been very slow to learn and I certainly have not dealt with illness. So I definitely don't want to say I even understand what that must be like, but I've seen like patterns and things I've done in my life, right? Not always good. And just, even now, having that awareness of, oh, okay, I see where I did that there and I see why I did that. And I wouldn't do that now, but like I still get those feelings, right? Like I still get like the shame or the urges or and part of it, I guess where I am now, and just hearing you say that is like I'm just learning to kind of go step back, breathe, and just kind of acknowledge it. I don't know if that makes sense or it's even, I don't know. But so much of what you're saying, I'm just like, oh my gosh, yes. So I can't wait to read it. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, yeah. And people say it's helpful, which is good. I think I need to get out from under the publisher. I think that
I was just about to, I think you're confident about your work. The work you did is excellent and can help people. It's the methodology with which it's going out into the world is what's giving you the problem.
Yes, I think so. Yes, because when I
two-
read it, I'm like, that's like it feels like a God thing. It feels like something that came through me because I need to read it and I read it and I go, oh, I wrote all this. Wow. Where did that come from? And yeah, I do think that the way it's being distributed into the world is not working right now.
Yeah. So it's not your work. So that's a good distinction to have. Important distinction.
Yeah, but it's like I also think it did need to happen because I'm not really allowed to talk about it, but whatever. But I got $3,000 back from what I invested, which allowed me to pay for my computer when it just died and all of that, and is allowing me to republish it. So I'm like, okay, this happened the way it was supposed to happen, so I need to just chill out. But it's still just really uncomfortable and like, okay.
So we don't acknowledge that it's a drag.
Yeah.
We don't want to over positivize everything in love and light.
Right?
Oh my
I hate
God.
that.
Like, no, it sucks.
Yeah, well, it's what sucked the most for me, I think, was because I've never figured out which way I'm supposed to be going in life, and I thought this would open a door and show me, okay, go more this way, and it
Mhm.
hasn't, and I just feel like I'm still just like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? That didn't work either. Let me try. So I'm like, I'm trying to start my own publishing company now. I'm like, well, I'll try that. If that doesn't, it's like I feel like I just hit doors every way I try to go, which is maybe telling me, no, you're just supposed to be and go be in your garden and do
Yeah,
this and
because where are you finding your joy right now?
in my garden with my squirrels and my cat and my husband. I mean, really,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, so it's not like you're being deprived of joy. What's giving
No.
you frustration is just the things that kind of like I haven't played out the way, you know, you
Yeah.
desired the way you desired them to be.
Yeah. Which is
And
my question about desire a couple classes back, where it's like, well, I desire this. He's not really helping me. So I'm like,
but then but he's also giving you a lot of joy too. So
yeah. And
that's
I think I feel good about, like, I have so many friggin' worms in my backyard, and I feel really good about that. Like, that I have so many earthworms and so many birds come and eat the worms and all of that stuff. And that makes me feel good.
and that you said chapter 9, and I think it's verse 2 in chapter 9. It says devotional work is joyfully performed.
Yeah.
That's very important. So that kind of, we're going a little bit ahead, but it does answer your question too, is that if you're doing something that's not giving you joy, that's like the signal of like, well, then, we got to do what we got to do, but
Right.
it's a signal that you maybe should, approach it a different way. If you can't do about the thing, then work on something else that is giving you joy, because we got to eat and and it's not, like it's a pandemic right now. Just say,
Yeah.
it's not easy to change a job or whatever. So you can balance that out, but with this knowledge that you're not stuck here forever.
Yeah. Sorry to make this all personal. I didn't mean to, but it's helpful.
Oh, this is
It's
oh my
fine.
God, this is what this is about. This is personalism. This is why we're talking about the joy in the, you know, uh, this is really what it's about.
This
And I
is
wanted,
good. It's like I've been struggling so much the last couple months, and I try to
yeah,
like stay positive and keep moving forward. But it's like bam, 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 and I'm like, God, this is like 40 years of bam, bam, bam. I'm really tired. What is yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I wanted when my desire was that this be a discussion.
Mm.
I really wanted it to be a discussion. And we had last week was a good discussion too. Remember?
Mhm. Yeah,
And we had a good discussion. And we went on for it's almost 9 o'clock.
yeah,
Going on 2 hours. Okay, that's fine. I had to let go to what I thought this was going to be like.
Sure.
I mean, and I'm glad Erin's with us again. I hope you're going to
Yeah.
be here the rest of the time. And obviously, this is going to go on longer than January 20th. To make it through.
I love it though. It's so helpful for me because
That's good. Yeah.
it like
Yeah.
recenters me, and I go, okay, and then I
Obviously,
start
that's
again.
what he wants. He wants us to. He wanted it to not be just 10, whatever it was, 9-10 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign. See, I gotta like tweak. I have to say, well, then it's not what I thought it was gonna be, but it's turning into something else, which is actually fulfilling the reason I did it in the first place.
Right.
That this becomes a personal thing. Like it's not about even how many people show up. It's that the people that show up get something out of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that and I hope, maybe, whatever maybe this summer we can all like, meet up or something like that,
That'd be super.
think how fun that'll be.
I
For
know.
sure.
We have not been out of our house since March, so it's like,
Yeah.
it's for me to go to the doctor. That's it.
Yeah. Erin, you live around
I'm in
close.
Garland.
I grew
Oh,
up in
really? That's
Garland.
far away. Okay.
Yeah. It's not bad. It's 20 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I used to be closer, but about 2 years now I've been in Garland. Mhm.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
far. I'm in McKinney.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We could find a good in between spot.
I
Yeah.
can drive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Chris,
far from you, Lavonga.
yeah. Well, but really, I don't know. If there's not much traffic on
If
75,
there's not much traffic, yeah.
you go
That's-
like a Sunday morning or something. It's I don't mind driving. I don't even mind driving for X amount of time as long as I know that I'm driving. You live in
Right.
Texas, like, I probably without traffic, it'd probably take me, 35, 45 minutes to get to you. But if I know that and it's just driving, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's the traffic. And then
Yes.
45 minutes turns into an hour and a half because
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the people that have come here in the last 10 years.
oh well.
Yeah.
That's why we're going blue though.
I know. I do like that part.
So that's the other part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, ladies.
Right.
Thank you.
We're ending on a good note.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, next week, and yeah, next week will be Christmas Eve. Well,
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
or whatever that means. Even at the church today, we were talking about Christmas, and everyone's just like, eh, like I mean, there's going to be and I mean, and unless I just get all weird that day, but there's going to be a like outdoor Christmas carol thing at the church on Christmas Eve, and the weather looks like it's not going to be too cold. But there's not much going on because there's no real church going on.
Right.
There's
I know,
stuff
it's weird.
happening online and this and that, but so everyone's just kind of like, whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah.
All righty,
Thank
All right,
you.
ladies.
you guys next week.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.